Started Grind. Like many things have started in California. Derek Anderson and Spencer Nielsen. In 2010, they're only 4 years old. They were entrepreneurs who just would get together and talk about their war stories. They would just kind of share what works, what doesn't work, those things that are part of an entrepreneur's lifestyle. So more and more people came, it grew. They moved to a facility, and after they moved it to a facility, they outgrew that. And then began to have people approach them to say, hey, can you bring this to my city? So I have been with Startup Grind since December. Just to give you an idea of the growth of our organization. In December, when I started, we were in 25 cities. We were in 50 cities in 25 countries because we're a global startup community. As of March, we are in 100 cities and we are in 42 countries, and we are we've got a reach of about 75,000 entrepreneurs all over the world. The reason I got involved with Startup Grind, I guess I should say what Startup Grind is really about. We want to inspire, to engage, to educate, and to connect entrepreneurs, founders, innovators, all around the topic of entrepreneurship. I've been to a lot of things. We have a great entrepreneurial ecosystem here in our region, but we don't have a venue, we don't have a format exactly where folks can really hear the story. So I saw that, I saw that and learned about the values of Startup Grind and thought that I wanted to bring it to our area. So far we've had 7 events. We're still slowly getting the word out about who we are. But again, we're growing. Just glad that all of you guys are here. I think we're going to have, most of you know John Miller, who's going to be our guest for tonight. Some of you know him, some of you don't know him. Hopefully before you leave tonight, you will hear some things that you did not know about him. So we have a tradition in Startup Grind that I want to ask you guys all to help me with, and that is to stand on your feet and help me welcome John Max Miller, who is a serial entrepreneur. Come on down. So John, just excited, and I'm a little raspy here because I've been shouting in the rain. So John, just excited to have you here. Thank you so much for agreeing to come and be interviewed, and just kind of sharing about, we talked about some of the things that you are so well-rounded. There are so many different things that you could talk about. So we thought maybe we would kind of do a little bit talking about being an angel investor. What does that take? What is it to be? We've got, in terms of our crowd tonight, we've got some students in the house. We've got some investors in the house. We've got some business folks, some business leaders. We've got a really nice mix of people. So we'll talk about some different things. But first, I just want to say welcome. Just really glad to have you here.
Okay.
So let's start a little bit, I guess, talking about you, John, the person, in terms of, did you grow up knowing, like, were you in a family where there were entrepreneurs that were all around you, or did you reach a certain point where you just said, you know what, I think I want to be a business owner? How did that play out for you?
I didn't want to work. I wanted to ski. That was my. That's how I grew up. I grew up in a ski family. But when I was 20 years old and I was skiing on the Peugeot circuit back then, and most people in the room don't even know what that is, but it was the Pro Tour back when I was 20 years old. My dad was working for a computer company that sold computers to car dealers, and he gave me an opportunity to go interview with the company that he was working with, and said, go make some quick money and get back into your skiing career. And I went and spent 3 months selling computers, and in the 3 months selling computers, which I'd never done before in my life, I made more money than I made in the prior 2 years skiing. So I decided business was probably a better idea than skiing when it came to making money. So I gave up my ski career, paid back my sponsor every penny he gave me, and took off selling.
And so that's how it. So often I hear, as I said, we've done here in the Albany area, we've done 7 interviews, and so I've had a chance to talk to some different people, and there seems to be kind of a theme that's recurring where there are some folks that say, yep, I knew my family, owned businesses, and that's absolutely what I want. But very often I hear a story that's like yours, where you kind of test drive something completely unexpected, find that you love it, and move forward. And so, from at a very early age, you began to get into businesses. You had an intuitiveness about businesses, that you began to buy businesses, acquire businesses, and really begin to turn them around. Talk about that. Talk about getting in there, really kind of seeing, assessing the landscape within a company, and then moving yourself to a position where you are now able to help ramp up the revenue.
I got to go back a little bit because you asked me a question. I'm not quite sure that I answered it. When I did the skiing thing, took off in sales, but I worked for that company for 5 years, and I went to the owner of that company with an idea how to expand what they were doing. They were a software company selling software to car dealers, and I went to them with an idea of building a service business behind the software because we were selling software that wasn't getting used fully. So I said, let's create a group of people behind that can utilize the software to its fullest. And he looked at me and said, why would you give me such a good idea? Go do it yourself. So that's really what sent me off into entrepreneurship. And candidly, I heard 2 stories tonight where people went off because they kind of got forced into it. They got fired from a job, or they just had something thrown at them. So that was my kind of throw into entrepreneurship. And I guess working with that company and or growing Ultimate Prospecting, which was my first business, and then selling it, I kind of went through the gamut of not wanting to be an entrepreneur, finding out I had to make it as an entrepreneur because I gave up my job, and then growing that business and then trying to figure out, when to sell that business, because my goal was to make a lot of money at that point. I never did anything for the dollar, but I think as an entrepreneur, you want to be successful. You want to make something happen. And some people, that's building a nice, comfortable living. To other people, it's building something that other people find enough value in that they'll pay you, money for, and allow you to either stay with the company or allow you to exit. So I think that for me, it was my first process of getting thrown into entrepreneurship, starting that company, and then finding out who to sell it to and selling it was really it was a 6-year, 7-year learning process. I got to do it once and didn't know if I was ever going to do it again. And then I just kind of flowed into the next business. I don't know if that helps with the background.
It does. It does, definitely. We hear a lot of terms that are kind of tossed around: entrepreneur, business owner, small business owner, serial entrepreneur. And so one of the things that we had chatted about earlier has to do with whether a person, they have an entrepreneurial mindset, but maybe they've got one great big idea. That idea works for them. They love it. They really don't have a desire to sell it, acquire it, grow it, sell it, and rinse and repeat. So how do, if we're speaking to people that are in that discovery stage, wanna-be-preneurs, they haven't quite, how do you decide? How do you make that determination of whether, this is going to be something that I'm going to just, it's going to be my baby, or what, I kind of like this entrepreneurial thing. I wanna just keep doing it. How was that for you?
Well, I can equate it to some conversations I heard going on this evening. For me, it was after I got the taste of building something and selling it, I liked the fact that I had built an entity that somebody who was much bigger than me said, we can take that and make it even bigger. And at that point, I had kind of hit my peak. I thought I was king of the world. I was an entrepreneur, had my own business. But somebody bigger than me said, we can make this even bigger. So they had a bigger vision than I had. I think the challenge is that who I sold to didn't really tell me the truth. They had a different vision, not a bigger vision. So they bought my baby. Then they told me my baby wasn't pretty. They wanted to change my baby. Then in my opinion, my baby came ugly, and I was forced to resign because I didn't like the way they were changing what I had built. So I think that as people go through trying to figure out whether they want to build something to own or they want to build something to sell, it depends on, really what you're looking for, short-term and long-term. I mean, if you're building something to own, you can build, as an entrepreneur, you can build hundreds of lifestyle businesses that make you very comfortable making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, that you can take care of your family and be very successful. And then there's other businesses that you can build into multi, 10 million, 100 million, 200 million, $billion businesses, and just bring public, or find somebody who's a much bigger to buy that. So I think you got to go with the flow, and you got to go with how you feel in your heart, and
right.
I think it depends on each individual person.
Do you think that there are certain characteristics that would kind of depict an entrepreneurial mindset? And if so, what would some of those things be?
I think number one is stick-to-itiveness. Somebody who has the tenacity to just, no matter what anybody tells them, because there are naysayers every turn you take. People who tell you, oh, that's a crazy idea, or oh, you're never going to make it, or no, that's not going to be $1 million business. You're going to build a little home cottage, business that's going to be, $100,000 a year, etc. But I think if you believe in it enough and you stick to it, and I also think that, for me and for the people that I've seen that have been successful entrepreneurs, they're the type of people that wake up in the middle of the night and they can't go back to bed and they go to work. And, I believe that part of the reason that I've had the small success that I've had is because I'm not any smarter. There's a lot of people in this room that are 50 times smarter than me. I'm just a hard worker. So I worked a lot harder than all the people around me, and I think I made up for what I had, in lack of brain power, I made up for in hard work.
So persistence and resilience and kind of that bounce back sort of, or attitude, all of those things kind of go into kind of those characteristics. If you are looking at, if a person is considering starting a business, or even, and you'll have to let me know if the mindset is different, but founding a business versus acquiring a business, at some point, I mean, entrepreneurialism starts off being sort of solitary. At some point you realize that you can't do it by yourself. And so then the question becomes co-founders, team building. Talk about kind of how that approach comes about.
The world is so different today, and there are so many different types of businesses to build. I think the entrepreneur starts with an idea. That idea gets grown. You start to create revenue, hopefully. I mean, there are some companies that have never created a cent of revenue and been sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's just a different world today. But if you're looking to build a business that generates revenue, you start off by finding a customer, making them satisfied, finding your next customer, and then growing the business from there. And as that business grows, you're going to build a team of people, hopefully around you, that are a lot smarter than you. If you're afraid to bring those people on, you're not so smart, because you're entrepreneurs. I literally think an organizational chart should be upside down. It is the people at the top that are doing the basic work every day that make a company successful, not the guy standing there with the baton saying this is the way we're going. You can be a great visionary, but if you don't have the right people around you and behind you, or really above you, supporting you, you're never going to grow a business to be a large business. And when I first started my first business, even though it ended up being $1.5 million business when I sold it, I was the dictatorial, you're behind me, you're below me, I'm the guy on top, don't get in my way, and that's why it was only $1.5 million business. Each business I've had, in the sequence of businesses that I've had, has gotten larger, and it's because I've been able to sit back and go, I'm not the guy at the top, I'm the guy at the bottom, I need your help, I'll give you the vision, I'll give you the direction, but I need you to help me get there. And I think it's building the right team around you that's and the bigger the team and the higher level of intelligence in that team, the better your business is going to be, the stronger it's going to be.
That seems to be a recurring theme that I have heard with the different entrepreneurs that I've spoken to. That Ed Mitson from Fingerprint Marketing said, I was just smart enough to hire people that were smarter than I was, and I'm very happy about that. He said there were some things that I just knew I couldn't do. I had no desire to do. And so I just got people that around me, surrounded myself with people who could do that. The first thing you said when you started that was talking about an idea. It always starts with an idea. So as either someone that's currently in business or someone that's interested in starting a business, how do you tell if an idea is viable? What are some of the things that you can do to kind of test drive your idea?
I'll give you my experience, I won't give advice. The first business, when I went to Mark Singleton, who was the owner of Coin, which was the computer company that I worked for, and I went to him with the idea of building a service business behind this. He said, do you think this will really work? And I said, I don't know, let me go find out. So I created a survey. This was back in 1988. I created a survey by hand. It was like 80 questions on a piece of paper, and I went around and visited 20 car dealers that were friends of mine that I had sold computer systems to, sold the software to, that weren't using it. And I went and asked them these 80 questions, and then I went home and I put them all into my little Macintosh Plus, and I tried to figure out if I really had, the right answers to this survey. And it proved that I had people that would pay me for what we wanted to do. So I went back to him with the idea again and said, this is the kind of revenue that we can generate from this. And that's when he said, go do this yourself. You shouldn't be giving me this idea. So it was kind of just do your homework. Find out if there are people out there that, if somebody's not willing to pay you for what you're doing, then in my opinion, you don't have a business. If somebody's willing to pay you for what you're doing, I'm all about it. Jeff Karankin would agree. Ringing the cash register. If you can't ring the cash register, maybe you might be WhatsApp, who gets bought for $1.8 billion, and you get very lucky, but I'm not going to be WhatsApp. That's honestly, would that excite me? Yeah, but I don't do anything for the money. Sure. You got to do it because you love it. And so for me, you find that passion and find somebody who's going to pay for it, and then go build it.
So basically, it sounds like you're saying you have an idea, you are smart about it, you do some due diligence, you do some research, you ask some questions. What about mentorship? What would you say about some of the things that I've heard some entrepreneurs say is, if you are interested in a particular field or an industry, then see if you can get a job working in, so you can kind of get a real life feel for what is this thing that you're interested in. Do you think that that would be something that would work? It doesn't sound like that might necessarily be in your path.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the right path for me, because I don't think I work well for other people, and that's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just who I am.
Sure.
I think that if you can get an internship or a job with somebody who's going to give you some experience in the arena that you want to get that experience in, I think it's worth it. I would be more apt to, again, just start it. And even if you have no money, most entrepreneurs, by the way, have no money. So you just try it and you do the best you can. And every business I've had, for the most part, I've bootstrapped. And I think that, to me, there's a lot of bootstrappers in here that I know that have absolutely just fought for years to make their business work. And I know people in this room, and some of them are very wealthy, and they bootstrap their businesses, and they've worked their asses off, and they have gone and made things happen. And I listen to a lot of tapes, and Dennis Waitley, who's a psychologist, I live by one of his sayings, which is winners make things happen and losers watch things happen. And I believe that if you're going to be a winner, just go make it happen. And don't listen to your naysayers, just put your nose to the grindstone and just go. And
just make it happen. So it sounds like you really have to have, we talked about resilience, that's one of the things, stick-to-itiveness, but there also seems to be like failure. What I keep hearing is, yeah, you fail, and that's part of the entrepreneur job description, but how do you fail and get back up? Or do you just fail the one time and that's it for you? What say you?
I have failed so many times in my life, it's scary. But I've never been afraid of that. I think, and I tell people that work with me and for me and around me, if you don't fail, you're not trying hard enough. So I think that it's easy not to fail. It's hard to fail. And if you put your nose to the grindstone and you work your tail off, you're going to fail. And people are going to get in your way. You're going to have challenges, and you may end up having started something that absolutely was a failure. I was listening earlier in the room, and there's a couple of people here that had a business. They were kind of involved in two, and one happened to not do what they wanted to do, but they have a second business that absolutely is taking off and doing very well, and they're successful. And I think that you got to keep going, and you got to get back up and get back on the horse and whip it and go again.
Just make it happen. So you should almost, with an entrepreneurial mindset, you really are almost expecting, if you're wise, you're expecting there to be some failures. It sounds like a lot of the growth comes from overcoming obstacles. What are some obstacles that you have found that just seem to be like, I keep seeing that thing. Not enough to make you stop, but just like, there's that thing again. What would you say in terms of, or something that you just said, that didn't like the way that felt, so let's not do that again?
I think for me, most of it was self-imposed fear. Mm-hmm. You think something was going to happen. There's this impending doom that's going to, you're writing software, and you know that the day you release it, 4 other competitors are going to come out. Mm-hmm. Or you're about to introduce an upgrade to a platform, and you know that when you do, it's going to fail, and half your customers are going to blow up at you. I think it's just your own self-imposed fear, and those things do happen. But I think if you have a culture personally that no matter what, you're going to make it right, mm-hmm. and your customers know that, mm-hmm. then it's okay to fail, because they're not going to leave you. They trust you. They know you're going to make things right. And as long as you have the process in place where you're not going to hurt their business by having that small failure, mm-hmm. everybody falls down.
So it's fail and iterate and fail and tweak it and tweak it and tweak it. Until you, so really, failure, like I said, failure should be something that you are almost anticipating.
Part of the plan.
Plan to fail. Okay, I think I've heard that too. In terms of, I don't want to say industries, but we talked a little bit about you have had a lot of experience in either going into a company or buying a company and then growing it and then selling that company. What do you look for when it comes to not so much investing in a company, but when you decide if you're going to actually put yourself into like, I think I want to buy that company? What are some of the indicators that would let you know that this is something, it's a worthwhile venture to pursue?
I really have only had one situation where I bought part of a company and got heavily involved. And in that situation, I had the industry experience. I had knowledge of the people that worked with the company. I knew what my own skill set was that I could apply, that I felt that they were in need of. And then So for me, it was, if I take this opportunity and I buy part of the company and I do what I know I can do, can I make a difference? And I really felt that I could, so I made the investment, and it was a very worthwhile investment. Knock wood, it could have been one of those failures, but it was a worthwhile investment. And it took 3 years, and we turned a $3 million company into a $30 million company.
Just moved to zero.
Just moved to zero.
And that worked. So let's talk about funding. So I have an idea for a company. I've done my research. I think that it's viable. I think that there's a good chance that this company is going to make it. You started off by saying there's money is like the issue. A lot of entrepreneurs, some have the resources within themselves, or they have the money. What are some ways, if I have an idea and I'm thinking I want to go forward, is it better for me to try and start with my own money or family, that way? Is that going to be enticing? I'm kind of leading into the investor conversation, but how does a person go about acquiring the funding to start their company?
Well, I know that we've all heard the term OPM, other people's money. Whether you have $1 in the bank or 10 million or 100 million in the bank, I know people that have 100 million in the bank and they still go for other people's money. So I think and I don't think what I'm learning is that really doesn't have anything to do with how confident they are about their own idea. I think as you become more successful, you want to bring other people into hopefully your successful fold.
Okay.
So you're looking to not just raise money, but you're trying to bring friends and family in. So somebody, a family member who gives you $25,000, your goal is, if you're a good entrepreneur and you're a good person at heart, your goal is to give them back $250,000 in 5 years and have them go, holy cow, what's next?
Right.
So I think that it all depends on who you are as a person. But I would, for me, again, I bootstrapped my businesses, or I've invested in them and grown them. Christine and I looked at a lot of different businesses, and people were asking for amounts from $5,000 to $50,000, and we had people come in that they thought they really had billion-dollar ideas. I mean, they would sweat sitting across from us, shaking, and so excited about what they had. And Christine is really good at research, and she would in 5 minutes go, "Have you heard about this company, this company, and this company?" And they would look at you dumb-faced. I mean, just absolutely awestruck, like, who's that? Go home and look them up, and there were 3 companies that Christine had done 5 minutes of research before they even came in, and they realized they had competition, so that they thought they didn't have. And I think that goes back to doing your due diligence. If you've got an idea, find out if it really is a unique idea before you go looking to someone you're gonna ask for some money. I always believe in asking your family. If you're that wholeheartedly in belief of your own idea, then you should be willing to ask your mother, your father, your sister, and your uncle, for $1,000 or $1 million, whatever the number is, to get your business off the ground, because you believe you're going to turn it into something and give them a return on their investment. Okay. So early stage, I think friends and family is not a bad way to start on a small business idea. Okay, so you said early stage, and I have 2 questions. I don't know which way to go. So I want to talk about the different types of funding that one could get, and also that I think sometimes an entrepreneur wannabe may say, okay, if I can just get this seed, this initial injection of funding, and maybe that's a little short-sighted because they're not looking at the big picture, and that perhaps there's going to be additional funding that's going to be needed later. So maybe that again goes into the research. How do you know? Like, how do you is that part of your research where how would one go about knowing? I think it depends on the stage of the company. I mean, if somebody sits down with you and they just have an idea, clearly they're looking to raise $10,000 or $100,000 to even if it's probably 10 or 15, 20 grand, just to go out and create a survey and get it out to 1,000 people and get the feedback and see if it's something that's even viable. If it's somebody that walks into your office and they have a product that's producing $25,000 a month and they've got a $300,000 a year business and they're trying to turn it into a $500,000 business, the process they go through is very different, and they're probably looking more like to an angel fund to give them a couple of $100,000 for a quarter, or 10%, 20%, 30% of their business to get them to the next level. And they're, obviously if you're a $5 or $10 million business, you're looking for $2 or $3 million, which is a different level. So let's talk actually a little bit about some folks I'm sure know and some may not know about the different types of funding. There's private funding, investors. You mentioned the term angel. Is every investor an angel investor? How are those determined? Venture funds, venture capital funds. How do those
What's the difference between them?
I'll give you my knowledge to date. Most angel investors invest under $50,000. I think you find angel funds that will invest up to a couple $100,000. Then you're looking at a venture capital firm that's a few million to 10 million, or even, some of them are $100 million VC firms that could throw that kind of money out there. But in the arena that we're talking about, I think we're talking mainly angels or small VCs looking to invest $500,000 or $1 million in a fund, or into a company. Excuse me.
So let's go into your mindset. Let's peel open your mind about being an angel investor.
It's scary.
I told you I was going to bulk and mind load you. This is not new information.
You might think I have Tourette's when we get into this.
But so you're, I'm John Max Miller, and I'm looking at companies, and so I've got my investor hat on, and I'm trying to make a determination of this is something that I want. What are the steps that you kind of go through? That you use to make a determination? What are angel investors looking for?
I think if you ask any angel investor, they're making a bet on the entrepreneur. Do they have the mental wherewithal and the stick-to-itiveness to bring this to its next level, or are they going to have to replace that person in the next 6 months because they have no idea how to operate their business? They're this complete visionary who sees this great picture but has no idea how to put it together. So I think it depends on the person that's in front of you. But I look and say, does this person have the ability to make it happen? Right. Are they just a visionary, or are they an operator? And where is the product? How much research have they done? Have they done their due diligence? Have they sat with Christine and had her throw 3 names at them? And do they look awestruck, or do they hand you an Excel spreadsheet and go, no, I absolutely know those 3 competitors. I also know 4 more. And here's the sheet that shows where they're greater than us and where we're greater than them, and why we're a better proposition to the consumer or to the business that we're selling to. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, I do. I think it did answer.
I'm afraid that thing's going to fall over on you.
I know.
It's totally distracting.
I didn't even sit. No.
You wouldn't see that unless you had eyes in the back.
I would. I'm looking in the reflection. I'm like, what is that waving waving at me? So really, it kind of depends on. You said something very interesting that caught my attention at the beginning of that statement, which is that you look at the person. You're not looking at the idea. So that could be good information for someone who's in that discovery stage, is like, oh, I've got this great idea. One thing that I've heard a lot about some students is that they have, I'm going to build this app. It's going to be amazing. 6 million people are going to download it, and I will be on a beach in Rio. And that's kind of, so they're looking at the idea. They are not looking at, so that sounds like that's really important information to kind of take in, that what are you bringing? You need to be bringing more than just an idea to the table. You really have to bring some of those things that we've talked about earlier, the research and the due diligence and the characteristics, kind of that resilience on the inside, which is what's going to keep you standing even when you've failed and you're on the ground, but that kind of brings you back up again. So that kind of...
I'll give you a good example. We ran a startup weekend 2 years ago, 3 years ago, however long it was. There were 12 great ideas in that room. Today, I'm not sure if one of those businesses is still standing. I think 1 or 2 are.
Okay.
Ideas are a dime a dozen.
Okay.
It's the people who can execute that are going to make it win, not the idea.
Okay. So it's not about, it's all right. That's resonating for me. Okay. Talk about one thing that I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs. I keep saying entrepreneurs, but it really could be small business owners. It could be business leaders. Talk about how something that's generated from just as they're going along and working their business, growing their business, is community engagement and philanthropy. That it just almost seems to be an outgrowth of wanting to make a difference. Have you found that to be so in your journey?
More so today than 20 years ago. 20 years ago was, I'm going to go make my money and I'm going to go to that beach in Rio. Today, I think that you find the world is much more socially conscious.
Okay.
So again, I'm doing my best at 51 years old to get into this new economy and figure out, not that I'm not somewhat philanthropic, I think I'm more philanthropic with my time and other entrepreneurs than I am with other aspects of my life. But I enjoy the early stage of the business, so that's what I selfishly give, if that makes any sense. but I think it's become quite a social and more philanthropic world today. So I think people try to build that into their business model with their teams and their product.
So as a business builder, that is something that you were suggesting that we don't kind of close that off. Like, make sure that that's something that you're taking a look at, because it's something that people seem to ask for, seem to be looking for in help with the community engagement piece of it.
Well, I think the world is so social that everybody looking wants to know that you're doing something for the world, not just for yourself.
Okay. You've done a lot of different, you mentioned the Grand Slam Alley, and I know that was something that you did with Christine. So a lot of different types of companies you have been involved with, that you've helped to be really successful, and you also have branched out from the business. I guess it's still a business, but it has to do with education. But it sounds like that's something, you're dealing with a child care center now. So talk a little bit about that, how that kind of fits into your, when I think about you and I look, I see kind of a growth, kind of a trajectory. And so talk about how the educational piece fits in with what you've been doing.
The world takes you in twists and turns, and the net of it is I got involved with a woman who was involved in childcare and helping her get her centers marketed, rebranded, and I really enjoyed the business. And as I was helping her, I realized what a crappy education I had. And there wasn't any Common Core, which I think is a good thing, but that's a whole nother subject. But I was ADD. I was all over the place.
Right.
My teachers couldn't control me, so in essence they hated me and didn't want to educate me.
Okay.
So because of that, I didn't like my teachers either, and I remember sitting in class thinking, this has nothing to do with my life. Why are you talking to me right now? And I went that way through high school, and I went that way through college for the 2.5 years until I ran out of there. And I just realized that education is something that's really important, and I didn't enjoy it. And when I watched her centers and the children being educated in a way that taught to their learning style, I really got a feeling that if I had teachers when I was a kid that looked at me and said, you know what, John, you are all over the place. How do you want to learn about dinosaurs? I would have told the teacher, and I would have told him how I wanted to learn about dinosaurs. I want to act like a dinosaur. I want to go out in the playground and pretend I'm a dinosaur. That's okay. It's better than drawing a dinosaur like everybody else who was drawing dinosaurs if that's not the way I wanted to learn.
Sure.
And we teach to that learning style, and I really felt that this is an opportunity for me as an entrepreneur to give back to a certain degree and make sure that any kid that is sitting there at 3, 4, and 5 years old, but that's where the brains are formed.
Right.
They're going to be 12 and 15 at some point, either looking at their teacher going, I shouldn't even be sitting here because you're an idiot, Mr. Teacher, or they're going to be sitting there going, teach me more, teach me more. I want those kids to be sitting there with a love for learning, and this is my chance to make sure that these kids that graduate from Smart Early have a love for learning. So that's really why I got into the business.
Very awesome. Very awesome. Talk to me about what was something that surprised you about being either a business leader or a business owner, something that was unexpected?
I guess the truth is how much pleasure I get out of helping other entrepreneurs. I mean, for me to see someone sitting across the desk from me who's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and has this fabulous idea, but isn't quite baked yet, to be able to sit and ask them questions and make them think through the process further, look at their competition, understand what the big picture is going to look like. I enjoy that process and helping them just get to where they want to go, and that brings me so much pleasure. I know this isn't part of what you want to hear, but I'm so disappointed that Christine and I weren't able to make in Troy Grand Slam Alley work, because that was truly a dream of mine to be able to get the support of the city, because I think the city is an amazing city. I think the entrepreneurial spirit here is just awesome, and I think this is, in 5 years, this will be a tech hub in upstate New York. I have no doubt in my mind, especially since Channel I's just moved into town. But I really do believe that, and I think that I think that entrepreneurship is such a heartfelt, spirited, fun thing, and I mean to sincerely thank you all for being here tonight, and not just to sit here where I'm sitting here, but I appreciate your entrepreneurial spirit, and This is what makes our economy roll. It's not the big businesses that makes this country successful. It's all of us putting our nose to the grindstone and making something happening and hiring some people and building something behind it that makes this world go round. So
Okay.
that's what I love.
Yeah, and so actually you answered my second question was I asked you what surprised you, and the second one was to tell me something that delighted you, and I think you shared that really eloquently. I wanted to leave some time for folks to ask questions. We gotta give them an opportunity to, I think a lot of people, know who you are and know some of the things that you've been up to. But I find it sometimes at these events, it'll generate questions. They'd be like, well, now that made me want to think about this. So I did want to open it up and ask if there was anyone that had questions that they wanted to.
Be nice.
Yeah, it'll be nice. This is definitely the nice show. This is the Startup Grind nice show.
There goes mine.
Jonathan.
I have a question. Hi, John.
Hey.
Jonathan with Upstate Venture Connect. Quick question. So, it sounds like your experience, you've done a lot with many different companies and mentored and invested. What was the thing in the beginning, upon the first fail, possibly, I guess I'm assuming that you did
No,
once,
many times.
right? That kept you going? What did you tap into? What was that actual tangible thing that you can relate to us?
I guess the people that inspired me, my dad, like to be able to know that he's sitting there, watching in the background going, I expect great things out of this kid, so I'm not going to let him down. That was probably my greatest motivator. And then just my desire to be successful and not take no for an answer. I'm a sales guy at heart, so when you're a sales guy at heart, you're going to hear lots of no's. So you just take the no's and smile and say thank you very much, and I'll see you next week with a better mousetrap. And you walk on to the next guy and go, here's my mousetrap. No, not a problem. I'll see you next week with a better mousetrap. And the interesting thing is you go out and you get that feedback. Guess what? You go back to your office, you create the better mousetrap, and they see you a week later. They're like, holy shit, he's back. And you do that after 5 times. After the 5th time, they're going to say, I'll just buy it so you don't come back anymore. And there's a lot of truth to that. And as long as you're iterating and doing what they want and what they expect, that's the stick-to-itiveness that I think really makes people successful, is just not taking no for an answer. Because your father could be the one that says no,
Thank you.
That works really well in interpersonal, but now translate that into the internet. How do you do that? Approach them again when you don't have that personal interface that you just described.
I think for me, and again, I don't have a ton of experience with that, but for me it would be carefully iterate to a smaller group to start, and then iterate to a second group, and because you want to be fresh. And I think that the challenge is that if you're iterating to the same group, and and again, that goes to doing your research, knowing who your competition is, because if there's 40 people selling the same app, you probably should start something else. And I think that that's one of the challenges out there, because if you're iterating and going back to me with the same thing, but yet so are 9 other people, I'm so bombarded with the same thing, in essence, that I don't have time to take a look. So I think you start with a much smaller group when it comes to internet testing, internet products, and then you iterate and then go to another group. And whether that's through segmenting, again, I'm not an expert at that. I'm not a neophyte at that. So I can't even really answer your question. That was just a best guess method. But there might be people in the room that can answer that, and if there's somebody that is, I would suggest let's answer it for the gentleman. So.
Anybody else? Questions? Oh, excuse me, 1 second. Go ahead, Colleen.
What was your criteria when evaluating a potential acquirer? Because you made a comment that your company was acquired by someone who thought shared the vision and then kind of changed direction. So what type of things do the business you worked in do you look at for a potential acquirer? In certain spaces there could be a very large amount of types of acquirers. So what do you look for in your experience, what have you learned?
I'd say one thing is when the businesses that I started, I knew who was going to acquire them when I started. Now that may be different today in this new world, but I'm still in this world, and I have a business now. I have 2 businesses now. One in Boston that's a call center in the automotive industry, and one that's in Clifton Park that's a child care facility. I know who I could sell those businesses to tomorrow if I'm profitable. And I have a list of customers that I could sell them to. When they come, for me, it's a matter of making sure the deal's right for me. When I sold to Reynolds & Reynolds, when I sold Ultimate Prospecting to Reynolds & Reynolds, basically I structured the deal in a way that the deal was structured with stock up front and money over a period of time. And I made sure that I got enough stock up front that I knew that if the stock was cut in half and I quit the next day, I was happy with the deal I got. So I knew that I could walk away and not have to stay with them to collect and be happy with the deal I got. So I think there's an old saying, it's not the deal you get, it's the deal you think you got. So it's really the deal you got, not the deal you think you got. And I think that you need to make sure that you evaluate very carefully what you really want. Everybody in this room, I guarantee you, if you have a business that you're ready to sell, you think it's worth X, it might be worth 5X. It also might be worth 1/5 X. It depends on who you're marketing to. So I think you have to have a realistic, valuation on your company, and you need to have a list of buyers, and if you've got one, you're probably going to get less than if you have 5. If you can play the group of people against each other, you're always going to get a better deal. It's just the net of it. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Next one was Spotify.
Spotify? I pay $9.95 every month for my son to have Spotify.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
When you're growing a business, you reach a point where, do we operate under the current infrastructure, or do we invest money and try to blow it up? What are the things the indicators that you look for? Are we ready to blow up? Are we ready to make that next step? What are the things that go into that decision?
Market analysis. What's left in the market? Who's your competition? How strong is your platform? Can you blow it up, or will it blow up? I think you just have to sit back and take a look at the big picture. Obviously, somebody like Spotify, that's obviously a blow up model, not blow up in your face model, but a blow it up model. That's probably a better way to say it. I think it's all about scalability today, especially with internet businesses. And I've seen a lot of businesses, not a lot, I've seen a handful of businesses that I know that have tried to scale and have failed at that point because they weren't ready. So I think, making sure that, I know nothing, I'm a technologist, but I know nothing about technology. You need to make sure that you have the ability to scale your product if you plan on blowing it up. So, I don't know if that was an in-depth answer, but.
That was a good answer. We like that answer.
According to you, I don't know if it was good.
Anybody else?
Yes, as an investor, you probably invest in companies that are doing just enough, but not great, and you don't really see it scaling. At what point do you turn off the switch? They're limping along, and they're doing okay, but they're not really, that's I've read in many articles where the investors are kind of at that point where it's a really gray area. So what happens?
I think if you're a good investor, you make the decision up front what your tranches are going to be. So if I were to look at your business and say, I'm going to give you $2 or $20 or $200,000, whatever the number is today, I'd want to know that in your business model, when that $200,000 was invested, I'd want to feel comfortable that you've gone from X to X times 3, whatever the number is. And at that point, I know you're going to need another $300,000, and I'm willing to give it to you. I know other investors that I've talked to that said, John, if you give her $200,000 and you get her to where she's doing $3 million, we'll give her $300,000 to get to $5 million. So I think a lot of it is just making decisions, and you have to be black and white. If you're not there, it's not, oh, geez, I'm this close. I'm so glad I could have made it, but this guy didn't. The answer's no. It's kind of like, it's very black and white at that point. Because if you go with your heart, you went with your heart a year earlier and said, okay, I'm going to give this person $50,000 to do X. They didn't execute, but now they're telling me if I give them another 100, they're going to make it. Why do I feel differently today than I did? Unless something dramatically has changed in that process, I wouldn't make the second tranche investment because you didn't hit your marks. So I think a lot of that is making sure that you have your business plan and your model really honed before you sit in front of an investor and you ask for money.
Well, I'm thinking, a dear friend of mine who I work for, startup in Germany, and he's made first 4 months made $2 million. He's doing very good.
Revenue or net?
Revenue. And
How much did he lose?
But he was profitable.
Okay.
He was profitable the first 3 years.
I'm supposed to take my pills now.
He was profitable the first 3 years of business, and then he started growing, and then there were issues with China, and then there were all these other things that came on board, and he got investors, and they came on, and he got $1 million, now he's got $2 million, and he went into a meeting saying, I know I'm at that precipice right now where, either I can lose it all or I'll just get more money. Well, my investors are gonna give me more money because they just have to, because they're gonna lose it all too. So I just find it really funny because he's just going along, he's doing it, and he wants to be successful, and he doesn't want to lose because he's gonna lose everything, of course. But he's got investors too that will keep him going, will keep him funded. And I just think, at what point do you turn off the faucet? At what point does that happen?
He's probably at a different level from an investor standpoint, where he's probably working with VC firms.
Yeah, he is.
I assume at this point.
Banks, VCs, yeah.
And he's probably at a point where they've got other tranches figured out to invest in his business if he's hitting marks.
Yeah.
But if he's running into, import issues and, things of that sort,
And,
if I was that bank or that VC firm, I may go, how far is this next $1 million going to get him, and shut him off if it's not going to get him where I expect it to. So I think one thing investors don't like are surprises. And the only thing that struck me is when you said he's having problems with China, the first thing I'm thinking to myself, and that literally went, why? He should have known he was going to have those when he started the business. So, and you can't obviously foresee everything, but to me, that's the first thing that ran through
And
my
he brought
eyes.
an investor who had expertise in China, who then invested in him.
Well, I go get more money from him than because he didn't.
So it's all fascinating.
Anybody else? Don't be shy.
Thank you for not asking any questions.
You look like you have a burning question, Bob.
He just wants to know where he's going for dinner.
Well, if we don't have any other questions, then I think that we are probably at a place where we can segue into the next portion of doing. We're going to do some more networking. You folks are welcome to hang out for a while we do that. I just want to say thank you. I always learn so much from these. My task, because I love people, and I love engaging people and just kind of creating a space where folks can share. But I get so into what's being said that I'm like, oh yeah, wait, I'm supposed to be asking questions. I'm sorry. So as I typically say, it's like we have to talk more, because there's definitely some more things that I would love to know, about being an entrepreneur, because I realize that Startup Grind is a startup. It has all of the growing pains of being a startup, and so it's. I just am so glad that everyone is here tonight. Again, we don't have our next event scheduled. We've got some folks that are kind of waiting to get some final things in. Probably in a week or so, I will have that information. I think most of you that register have got your email addresses, so I can certainly let you know when the next event is going to be. But just again, really glad that you gave us the opportunity to inspire, to educate, and to connect. Entrepreneurs, investors, that's what we're about. And so we just try and do it in a format where folks can learn more about folks that are in the chair. So I thank you for that. And I think we're at a wrap.
We can go out there now.